Why can't I just let this person go? This is a question I get asked all the time from people who are going through breakups. A similar question I get asked is, why do I still miss them when they treated me so badly? Somewhere along the line, we got the message that when we leave a bad relationship, we are immediately supposed to feel better and be totally over it. Which is crazy because that's not what happens at all. Yes, there are things that do get better as soon as you leave a relationship that's not working or that's hurtful. Like, for example, if you're in an abusive relationship and you leave that relationship, certain areas of your life will immediately get better. You won't be subject to abuse anymore. So that's a win. But that doesn't mean that we're totally fine after we leave that relationship. So that's what I'm going to be diving into here today. All the nuances of this and what's normal to expect when you leave a bad relationship. So if you're new to my channel here, welcome. My name is Lindsay and I am the Real Love Alchemist. I help women go from bad relationships to real love with the magic of subconscious work. So if you're interested in learning more about me and the work I do and how I can help, click on the link in the description here. I'm going to leave my website. So what's really going on here when we're talking about this idea that we should just be totally fine when we leave a bad relationship? Because this is something that happens a lot. We go out there, we get into a relationship, it seems good, somewhere along the line things break down, we realize actually this is not so good a relationship. Maybe this is an abusive relationship. We tell our friends and family about what we're going through and they say, leave, leave, leave. Eventually we do leave. And then we tell those same people and they say things like, oh, you must be feeling so much better right now. When, yeah, you might be feeling a little bit better, but you also might be missing them at the same time. And so if you feel a little crazy about that. Using the same example, you did leave that abusive relationship and you go to your friends and family and you say, I really miss this person. And maybe they look at you like, what? How can you miss this person? They treated you so badly. And you come away from that experience thinking, well, gosh, maybe there's something wrong with me. There's not. And so where I think a lot of people are coming from, it's kind of like wishful thinking. Like we kind of hope that if we just leave a bad relationship, then everything will get better and we'll just instantly be okay. But unfortunately, that is not what happens. Logic would tell us that if we left something bad and now we're not in it anymore, we should be happy. We should feel better, right? And I think that's where a lot of people are coming from when they can't understand why you might miss this person that did treat you badly or why you feel sad that the relationship has ended. So again, that's the logic that many people are operating from. And you may have even taken this on yourself and you might be operating from this logic. But this logic doesn't make it true. There's so much more that's going on here when it comes to emotions and breakups. So let's go a little bit deeper into this. Let's look at the actual logic that I was just talking about how things do really get better in some areas of your life when you leave a bad relationship. And full out disclaimer here, leaving a bad relationship ultimately will level up your life in all the different ways. It just might not feel like that immediately. We're talking about the immediate aftermath here of a breakup, like a breakup that you decided to initiate a day ago, a couple weeks ago, even a couple months ago. You don't pop out of that relationship immediately healed and feeling better. But what does get better are certain things about your emotional experience, certain things. Like back to my example earlier, if you were in an abusive relationship and you leave that relationship, you are going to feel much more peace at times. You're going to feel like your nervous system can start to settle down because those types of relationships can be very, very difficult for our nervous system. And you can feel like you're finally regaining your life back. Now, it's not going to feel like this all the time, but you'll have moments of that where you feel like, whew, you can start to relax. You really let go of something that was very painful and very challenging. So that's something that does happen. That is a good thing that you can feel immediately coming out of a bad relationship. You can feel things like freedom because your ex is no longer around criticizing you or challenging you or making you feel bad about the decisions that you make for yourself. And that's a really important benefit to take in here and to acknowledge. But here's the thing that can trip us up. The emotional attachment that we've developed with this person, whether it was over years or months, doesn't dissolve immediately after you leave that relationship. And that's why you can have the experience of feeling better in certain ways, but worse in certain ways initially. You can leave a bad relationship and feel like you finally got some peace and you feel like you're free, and at the same time, you can miss them terribly. And you can be really sad because you're grieving the loss of the relationship. Even though it was bad, there's always some good moments, because if there weren't, you wouldn't have stayed as long as you did. If it were all bad from the beginning, you wouldn't have gotten into that relationship. So you're grieving a very real thing here. Anytime we're in a relationship with someone that's intimate, we do form an attachment. And I'm not talking about attachment theory here, but I'm talking about an emotional bond with someone. And like I said before, that isn't something that you can just pop out of a relationship and it's just gone. It takes a while to grieve the loss of this person, even though they weren't good for you. Maybe even if they were abusive, you still have to go through that grieving process. And it's hard and it's painful. And this is across the board. Like I said, any type of relationship, you're gonna have to grieve if it comes to an end. But especially if the relationship was toxic or the relationship was abusive or this person just was hurtful to you, it actually makes it even harder to grieve that relationship, because you're not just letting go of the person in the relationship, you also have a lot of wounds that are coming up from the relationship. So it's actually sometimes doubly, I don't know if that's a word here, just feels appropriate for this thing we're talking about. It's often like doubly hard to get over this person when the relationship was bad or toxic. I actually believe it can be even more painful to end a toxic relationship than a relatively healthy relationship where maybe you just wanted something different or you grew apart. It's, I think, so much harder to move on from that. Because like I said, there's so many things that you have to heal from that were triggered in that relationship or that were caused by that relationship. There's something called a trauma bond, which makes it hard to leave a toxic or abusive relationship that isn't happening in a healthy relationship. And this is a whole subject in itself. I'm not going to talk about it in depth here today, but I'm going to leave a link to a video at the end of this video about trauma bonds. If you want to learn more about that, check that out. So my message here is, don't let anyone try to convince you that there's something wrong with you if you're not totally over it or totally fine after you leave a bad relationship. It simply doesn't work like that. You have to let yourself grieve the loss, just like any other relationship. Let yourself feel the pain, and little by little, you will let them go. You're likely to feel sad and miss them as you go through the grieving process. And again, that's normal. So if you find yourself asking that question, why can't I just get over them? Or like, why do I miss them? The answer is because it's normal, because this is what happens to anyone who's in a relationship. Even though the relationship was bad, you still have formed an emotional connection that you have to work through. You're normal, and it means that you were able to love someone deeply. It's actually a really good thing. It means you were able to open your heart to someone and form an emotional connection. And if you can do it, if you've done it before, that means that you can do it again. You can find love again after leaving a bad relationship. Just like all things emotional, this will eventually pass and you will feel better in time. Now, time alone does not heal all wounds, so if you need some help with moving on from a bad relationship, if you feel like you're stuck, you're not moving forward, check out my Ex Detox program. That's what I made it for. It's to specifically help you to move on from those obsessive thoughts that you might have about an ex. So I'm going to leave that in the description here. So if your experience in a relationship was toxic or if it was abusive, you might be going through something called a trauma bond. So check out this video here. I go deep into what a trauma bond is and how to move on from it.